Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well. Another weekend, another week's gone by and plenty happening. And you'll notice we've got a couple of new faces here, which you're going to see between now and Polling Day. You'll see lots and lots of faces, new faces, as well as the old, well-Kent faces too. And if the first one there, I've got Simon McLean up there, who is standing for the Alliance to Liberate Scotland in the the West of Scotland list. Simon, welcome.
Thank you, Roddy. Nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And I believe you feel like your special interest is in drugs and drug rehabilitation in Scotland.
I'm glad you put the rehabilitation bit in there. Quite often I'm introduced as having an interest in drugs.
I buy and sell them all the time.
Yeah, I'm a retired police officer. I worked for a career in drug enforcement. So yes, that's correct.
Excellent. And maybe something will come up on that during the show. You never know.
And I'm sure it will, Roddy. I'm absolutely 100% sure it will.
And we've got Laurie Moffat from the Sovereignty Party and an Alliance to Liberate Scotland candidate in I keep getting them mixed up in the Central and South. Central and what Eva's shaking her head. I keep getting them mixed up. But anyway, welcome. And you're standing in Cowdenbeath as a candidate there.
Yes.
Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you, Roddy. Thanks for inviting me onto the show. As you can see behind me, I'm an avid annual ground rent. I'm a Georgist reformer. I advocate for, I'm a bit of a radical when it comes to what I'm trying to push for, but I think I'm in good company. So thank you.
You're welcome. And Eva, your specialist interest is answering the different questions from the one I asked. But let me start with this one. We keep hearing from people that we are not a colony. That it's just these mental independentistas that are starting rumours. But this week, one thing that came out very quickly was I'm just trying to find it. He said that the Scottish Government's plans for a 1.5 billion wind farm up in Ardersier, a place that's in desperate need of jobs, was blocked under security reasons. Do you believe for 1 minute it was security reasons, or do you think it's maybe scorched earth policy?
Well, let's put this in context of the deindustrialisation of Scotland that has happened since at least the 1970s. That has not been accidental. That's been deliberate. It probably started with the coal miners, shipbuilders, and it continued beyond that to the infamous words of the Proclaimers song Letter from America, Bathgate no more, Methil no more, Linwood no more, etc. And then more recently we've had the Grangemouth fiasco, Ravenscraig, you name it. But these were all industries that were beneficial. They were the absolute linchpin of the Scottish economy. They were very necessary. What oil producing country doesn't have its own refinery? But we lost all these resources, and that was deindustrialisation. This is fully worse because Ardersier and Nig, Kishorn, these places, they were the headquarters, if you like. They were the boilers, they were the areas where the oil industry boomed and people were employed in very gainful industries, and those were also lost. So it was going to be a bonanza for Ardersier, bringing 1,500 jobs, but now they're not even coming there in the first place to be lost. It's gone beyond deindustrialisation to simply cutting off opportunities for Scotland without just cause and no good reason, especially when you look at what there is elsewhere in the UK that has a Chinese connection. So it's worse than scorched earth. It's denying opportunities to people for no good reason other than that they can be shifted elsewhere and keep Scotland down. Were Scotland an independent country, we would be using our resources for our own benefit. We would be building our own wind turbines. We would be putting them wherever in the country we felt like it, because we would not be dictated to by Westminster in terms of the bigger economic picture. The quicker we get out of this union, the better.
Absolutely, 100%. And ladies and gentlemen, just before I move on to Phil on this question, you see in the top left-hand corner a QR code there. That's part of the Alliance to Liberate Scotland crowdfunder. And if we're going to get out of this union, they need all the help they can get. So if you've got a few pennies spare, hit the QR button and throw in a couple of pennies to help out. But on this topic of the wind farm up north in Ardeshir, Phil, they're saying it's a security reason, and for security reasons they can't allow the Chinese in. However, we see down here in England, Phil, here's just some, and I've got more to come. But you know, they're into all of these things, including having a third share in the Hinkley P power station, nuclear power station, which they're helping to build. Now, surely that would be a bigger security risk, but because it's for England, it's okay. Is that basically what they're telling us?
Yes, as long as the investment's in England, it's fine. It's not just that. Some of the key pipelines are run by the Chinese in the North Sea, some of the oil pipelines. And that didn't seem to be a problem when the cash was coming into the coffers of BP, Shell, and the government. This is obviously put this into context, a 1.5 billion wind turbine plant to manufacture wind turbines in the Highlands of Scotland, where we desperately need work, where we desperately need investment, and we're not getting it for the Brits, has been blocked by the Brits. Now, this is the renewable energy company Minyang, okay, and it was going to be the UK's largest wind turbine manufacturing plant in the Scottish Highlands. How many times have we got to say that? An area bereft of investment and desperately needed it, where people are reaching away, moving to the cities, all of the brain drain, the youngsters, we kind of get them to stay there. And, this is, as you say, a colony. The UK says no. It's a colony. Sarah, Alf's, Salvo, SSRG are all correct on this one. The Cromarty, Firth, Nig, Fortrose, Bewley, all this. This area desperately needs investment. And it will have it in an independent Scotland, but not in the colony that we currently are. 1,500 jobs in Ardeshir Port. That would be quite incredible. But the UK government said, after, as you said, careful consideration, it could not support the use of Chinese turbines in UK offshore wind projects, a decision the Scottish government says will have far-reaching consequences for the Scottish economy. Was your spine? Stand up, Scottish government, and fight this. Now, this was, it comes after discussions between the company and the Scottish and UK governments for more than 2 years. Now, it was welcomed by the chair of the Westminster's Business and Trade Committee, Liam Byrne, who said, "Our committee has consistently warned that in a more unstable world where China has too often resorted to the tactics of economic coercion, we simply can't surrender control of our energy supply chain in a way that creates risk of new and unwise dependencies." Look at that list you just come out with, Roddy. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But it's okay to pay double bubble and keep your sponsors' profits high, Mr. Liam Byrne. I mean, this is a joke. Currently, the UK turbines come from Siemens, who are German, Vestas, who are Danish, GE Verona, US, Nordex, German, and a lot of them were Senvion, which were bought by Siemens in 2019. So no, a total con. We're a colony, a colony. And they are stopping investment in Scotland. So long as it's in England, it's okay.
Oh yeah, we've got plenty more of that to come. But that's the thing, Simon. And here's just some more of the investments that the Chinese are welcome to put into England, it would seem, but not Scotland. But I go back to the first one, is that, you know, they did put in the Hinkley Point nuclear power station. What's more energy than that? They said they didn't want them in the energy sector. You can't get anything much more energy conscious than a nuclear power station, can you?
Not at all. What's interesting for me, Roddy, is I said I had a background in police. I spent a career in the police. And a great excuse for anything, as soon as I saw the reason, which was simply security, I knew that it was a lot of nonsense, because that's the easy way out, isn't it? As soon as you say security, nobody can ask you any questions. It's the oldest trick in the book, you know what I mean? In the interests of national security and all that stuff, what it means is we don't have any reasoning. We don't have any proper thought out evidence here that we can say we've got a plan or we've got a way forward. It's basically, on one hand, politics, because they do this to us all the time, undermine our own, actually the devolved government that we have just now got undermined all the time. And as Phil said, they don't have the gumption to stand up to it just now, because they're playing games too. The bottom line is, as always, we all suffer, and these dictations of rules from Westminster affect communities. It's the one word we haven't mentioned here, but it's something that I've watched my whole life, is our communities being devastated, as was said earlier on, by these decisions over the 60 years, if you like, that I've been politically aware. It's an ongoing thing from Westminster that undermines us at every turn, and only makes us more determined to have our own decision making and independence in due course.
Yeah, it is, Laurie. I mean, we go into again and again about all the things that they're allowing to happen down in England, and what they can do. But it's not just this investment, because goodness knows what supply chain might have followed around about that, with that opening up. But again, we've just been thwarted because it's not for England. So really, we're not interested. To hell with it. We can make a point here. We can score a point.
Yeah, no, Roddy, I find it even difficult to debate this subject, because it's so obvious now what they're doing. You know, it's not even. I struggle to even see. There isn't an argument for what they're doing. The deindustrialization that's happened, you know, going on with what Eva said earlier, to the 70s, is beyond that now. You know, the lack of investment, the lack of future planning, the absolute neglect across the board when it comes to Scotland. I mean, for me, it's negligence at best and criminal at worst. It's absolute sabotage to the Scottish economy and our industry, our manufacturing. You know, I mean, I worked in the oil and gas industry for 15 years as well. I had to change jobs, had to change professions, because the absolute lack of investment in the North Sea. You know, I lost my job in 2016. For me, it's obvious what needs to happen. You know, I've got a clear plan on what we need to do to rebuild Scotland, but that has not been part of the UK. You know, for me, we need to cut ties. We need to get rid of this union, and we need to rebuild Scotland for the Scottish people. And it just will never happen as long as we're part of this whatever you want to call it, this United Kingdom, which is not so much a United Kingdom anymore. So I mean, I struggle to debate this subject and even try and see. I always try and see it for both sides, but on this occasion, it's absolute criminal, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, if only we were a union of equals, Eva. We've seen it with the steelworks, we saw it with Grangemouth. But to rub salt in our wounds in the same week as they knocked back a 1.5 billion investment, creating 1,500 jobs because security and other times it's about money. How about this? They did manage to find £45 million to. I tell a lie. I've hit the wrong one. They found 45 million quid to refurbish a snooker hall, namely the Crucible. I'll keep hitting the wrong buttons here. I need Techie to step in and save me embarrassing myself further here. So they're doing this to the Crucible, 45 million investment, Eva.
Right, I like snooker. It's a while since I've watched it, but I enjoy watching it from time to time. I'm going to avoid saying what you expected me to say about this story. I'll leave that to one of the men. But the fact is that Britain was meant to be skint when Labour took power. We were told about the need to tighten our belts. We were told about public service cuts. We were told about how there would be issues about tax rises. There was a whole load of hassle about, for example, the bedroom tax, the two-child rape clause, you name it. And here we find that, in fact, there's 35 million it is, as between, I think, central and local government. Yet national and local government will supply £35 million of the 45 million revamp cost, and the other 10 million comes from the private sector. Again, it's priorities. You know, you've got, for example, in Scotland, You have a number of places now where children can't even go swimming because the swimming baths have been shut down and have not been replaced. And there's pledges from the Scottish Government that they will be in due course. But that obviously depends on the amount of money they've got, and they're predominantly reliant on Westminster. So the context of this is that Barry Hearn and his private company, I can't remember what it's called, something like Matchroom Sport, they put the events on, Matchroom Sport, worth an undisclosed sum of money, used the venue, but threatened that if it wasn't revamped, they'd not be able to use it in future. So last month, Keir Starmer visited the Crucible to discuss the redevelopment. So isn't it great fun that you can get the Prime Minister to come to your fancy venue, and then all of a sudden the funding is found down the back of the couch when Britain is so skint that levels of poverty in some parts of the country, including particularly in the north of England, are going through the roof. So it just shows you where the priorities lie. It's with flash, it's with showing off on a world stage. It's not about looking after the ordinary people of the country, and it just underscores how much the people of Scotland particularly need to take their own destiny into their own hands in May and vote for the change that only comes with independence, self-determination, and the desire to stand on your own 2 feet.
As I say, Phil, a 45 million over period for a snooker hall, for want of a better phrase. But it wasn't so long ago we were discussing on here when the UK government also agreed to give 2 billion in kind to the Manchester United refurbishment of their ground at Old Trafford. They're going to make it like round the West Ham United stadium down in London, which got government money. They can always find money for projects in England. It just seems that the colonies of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have just got to go without every time.
Yeah, I've lost count of the amount of times that Scots, not just here but everywhere, have had to foot the bill for projects in England, be it Crossrail, be it Hinkley Point, be it the list just goes on and on. And this is a 45 million. It may sound a lot of money to some, but when you think Strathclyde Regional Council's budget is $1 billion a year. You know, we put it into context. This is just part of an ever-increasing drain of monies from Scotland. We put in way more to the British economy than we get dealt out with pocket money. And that's the big issue here. This is the recurring theme. Scotland pays much more into British coffers than it gains in pocket money from when we get monies back every budget every year. And primarily it's disguised. The game's played by Gers, by the Gers figures, and most of the funding is already tied up with healthcare and education, both of which in real terms are in decline, in real terms. So this even though it's a drop in the ocean, it's synonymous with the general trend of investing in England and screwing down, and particularly the southeast, even though this is the north. You go to Middlesbrough, you go to Newcastle, it's ignored just as badly as we are, but we can do something about it. That's the difference. This is about taking your own destiny in your own hands and stopping those who would keep you on your knees from basically financially destroying you. They take your pocket, you take the money off you and give you back pocket money to live. Where's your self-respect, Scotland? We do need to stand up, need to stop this. This is just more of the same. It will continue. And as Laurie says, we need a country where we look after our own, where we take care of ourselves and put our own house in order first. And that's why we do what we do at Alliance to Liberate Scotland. And you know what? We're not precious about things. It's all inclusive. All Scots, we need to reenact the Yes campaign, that philosophy where every stripe and every part of Scottish society can contribute to an independent Scotland. And then we discuss the kind of Scotland we want. And I trust the people of Scotland to make the right decisions, because we have a socialist bent. We still care about it. The communities we talked about, Simon, ex-cop, I was a cop for a much shorter period, but I was in the period when they started coming in, and communities to me were really important. Community policing was really important, and they started this zero tolerance rubbish. When it's absolutely nonsense. When a police officer like PC Murdoch in Urwilly, you know, that's the kind of police I grew up with. clip
I'm too young to remember that film.
And the clip in there, but that's the kind of Scotland we are. It's totally different. You know, give police officers the discretion, give them the training, let them live in that society. Because they come from these communities, they protect these communities, and these are the communities that look after each other. The neighbours visiting old folk next door, that's the kind of Scotland I want, and I trust Scots to build. So your 45 million for the Crucible Theatre, you're welcome to it. We need our own country, and we'll do all right.
Yeah, this is it, Simon. I mean, the amount of reasons people have got to vote for independence keep growing.
Mhm.
Anyone watching just these two items, the first two items we've discussed today, you know, being stopped from creating a job of 1.5 billion investment, and we've always got money to invest down the road. Surely that would be enough for every last unionist to go, you know, they've got a point.
You would think so. And of course, we could go on all day and all night and all day and all night
Yeah,
about
yeah.
all the injustices and how Scotland plays second fiddle. Roddy, I love the wee story you told me yesterday about how you got involved in supporting independence way back. I won't say when, because that would give too much away. And it would be a waste of that plastic surgery that you've obviously had. But you said that you heard someone talking. I think it was an old SNP politician way back in the day.
Indeed it was.
When I can always remember my family, it was kind of taken as read in Scotland that you would vote Labour. You know, my father, my grandfather, we were a socialist country, and that was taken as read. And my mum said she was going to vote for Winnie Ewan or whatever it was at the time, and it was seen as a bit of a joke, you know, as a bit of a don't waste your vote. It just shows you how far we've come. But the story you told me was about your next door neighbour. Imagine getting your wages every week, and the first thing you have to do is hand it over to your neighbour across the garden fence, and they give you back a proportion of it as your pocket money. Lots of working men in Scotland could relate to that because they would put their wage packet on the table for the housekeeping for the week. But in this case, the analogy for you was that we hand it to England, and then we take back what they deem to give us and complain about that as well. The thing about the Crucible, what I found interesting about it, and this is what's good about what we're doing and about our campaign, which is all under one umbrella, and it's the only policy we have at the moment, is independence. Because everything else follows on from that. We can't do anything without our own volition. We can't do anything without the freedoms that we need. But the points for me, looking at it through my prism, if you like, it all comes back to the same question. What governments choose to prioritise and what they're prepared to ignore completely. Because what we would prioritise in Scotland is entirely different from the priorities that the Westminster government have. And we know that. Every Scot knows that because we have different ways of looking at life here in Scotland. We have empathy. We like to help the underdog. We like to help the weak and the people in society that need a hand up. A completely different philosophy here in Scotland. And while we're talking about the investments, like this 45 million and obviously up north as well with the...
You've put yourself on mute, Simon. You've muted yourself there. You've hit a button and muted yourself, which now means you also owe me £1. It's a rule in here. You have to send me £1. Like you've done it again. You've muted yourself again. Unmute yourself and keep your hands away from the screen. There you go. You're okay now. Right.
How far did I get?
There you go.
So it's what governments prioritise. And we can debate investments, theatres, foreign policy, investment up north, all these things. But at the time we're debating that, 3 people are dying on Scotland's streets every day. So we're bogged down with these arguments about spending and this and that and the next thing. What we need to argue about is where the money is not where the money should go, but the money we're already spending, huge sums, dealing with the consequences of current Westminster policy. I'm talking about drug policy. We could go on and talk about policing, about courts, about prisons, about healthcare. We could go on and talk about weapons that we're buying and wars that we're supporting all over the world. The decisions that are being made to spend our money that we hand over the garden fence or where the real arguments lie for me. Because while they're arguing about these things and missing Scotland out, we're suffering the consequences. And I keep coming back to communities. It was great to hear Phil say that he was a police officer, and that's what he remembered straight away, was what we had in our streets. And the Bobby, if you like, was part of that. Not anymore. I can't remember the last time I saw a beat man on the street.
Yeah, it's gone. And Bobby's taken on a whole new meaning. Laurie, that's, we've talked about this. It's so obvious, as I say, to us, but it just does get winning that people don't want to see the reality sometimes.
Well, just to build on what Eva, Phil, and Simon have said, it's all smoke and mirrors. There is an abundance. We have an abundance of wealth. Yes. Yeah. And it's how they prioritize that wealth. And how what they communicate to the public. We've all been brainwashed, right, to believe that we're skin. We're not skin, right? It's how do we share the wealth of our nation? We've got an abundance of wealth. Okay, these decisions, this refurbishment. Let's celebrate it. Let's celebrate this. I love snooker, right? I love snooker. Let's celebrate it. But we should also be pushing for. For instance, Loch Gelly, where I live, for the last 10 years, they've been pushing, we've had plans for a new medical centre. The medical centre's fallen to bits. We can't even get doctors to come and work there because there's tiles and falling off the ceiling and doors hanging off the hinges. Yeah? It's how we prioritise that spend and prioritise people. We need to put people first. Yeah? We seem to have plenty of money to go for foreign wars and all the rest of it. But when it comes to the grassroots and the people, our communities are suffering through absolutely the way we prioritise, it's just terrible. So, and again, just touching on what Phil says, that spend will be calculated in the GERS figures, but we've got virtually no say in how, in that spend. We pay up and then we get blamed for our failing infrastructure in Scotland. The game's rigged. The game is absolutely rigged. So, as a land reformer, I say that the Scottish money should fund Scottish priorities. You know what I mean? If our revenue should fund our own priorities, including proper. We should be capturing. I'm a Georgist, so I'm going to be pushing the Georgist angle. So, we should be capturing land rents for public good and not focus on Westminster vanity projects. But let's celebrate, a new snooker hall and all the rest of it. But we should absolutely not be under no illusion. There is an abundance of wealth in this country, and we just need to be able to share it. Yeah, and that's my message.
On to something else, slightly similar on funding, Eva. Now, we don't really live in a true democracy in the UK. Or anyone in the West, we don't really. It's not a true democracy. It's a kind of feudal democracy. But they keep changing the rules every time they get a chance. Now, I put it up earlier by mistake, but this is it. They started out today, or this week rather, a debate in the Houses of Parliament blocking political funding and crypto donations from overseas. But it is, as they say, the headline says in The Guardian, this wasn't done for democracy, or they're worried about, interference from foreign governments, because I'll come on to that in a second. This was done to stop getting money to reform now. None of us here are great reform supporters or any political party, but that was not done with the best of intentions. It's done to try and stop an opponent, not instead of debating them by democracy, by debate. They want to cut the funds off. It's typical Westminster gerrymandering.
And it's one of the reasons why people are so switched off from party politics, because they see that it's not the country that's being prioritised actually by any of these parties. It's it's for the benefit of individual parties, individual politicians. It's not for the collective good of the country. If it was for the collective good of the country, then these rules would have been revamped long, long ago, And you'd probably find that if they had been, a lot of people would have fallen foul of them and they would have been prosecuted. But instead, every time that we hear something dodgy, we're told it's been resolved, move on, nothing to see here. And this latest is just a stick in plaster. It's pretense, designed to try and hobble reform when everybody else has already been able to fill the coffers with the donations that have already been received.
Yeah, Phil, you know, it's not, this wasn't done to stop likes of you and me who live out the country most of the time from putting in money. As I say, it was done to specifically stop one of their opponents. And a government doing that, I mean, that's just corrupt. Whether we agree politically with the party, it doesn't matter, because, you know, it's the old, first they came for the communists and I said nothing. If they're allowed to do it now, they keep doing it. They did it years ago to stop Sean Connery putting some money into the SNP. It's absolutely disgraceful.
But yeah, but what do we expect? What do we expect from these people? This is capping donations from overseas electors. It's a ban on crypto donations, particularly to protect democracy, so they say. That's actually just to protect the current US, EU and British hegemony, such as EU and Brit has. We are the lapdogs, the wee chihuahuas of the US. And the US actually hegemony, which is based on petrodollar and usury capitalism, is what's being protected here. And this is supposed to be protecting UK democracy from the scourge of foreign actors. Foreigners, those bloody foreigners again. There we go, back to this right-wing crap. And financial influences were set to come into force. Now, there's an annual cap. They're talking about 100,000. Okay, so under new rules, British citizens living abroad will face an annual cap on their political donations of 100,000 and the regulated transactions such as loans of the same value. But see, when you look at this, think about it. Reform is a really good example. They're primarily funded by a small group of wealthy individuals, corporate donors and investors with ties to fossil fuels, finance and offshore tax havens. These are the big organizations that keep us on our knees. Here's the major donors, right? It's received substantial donations concentrated amongst a few net worth individuals. The largest donor is Christopher Harborne, British Thai entrepreneur and CEO of AML Global, who's contributed over 19 million. Hello, Christopher. If you check, you'll see a wee code there. You can send it to us. We'll free Scotland, and we might say hello, but we're not going to kiss your backside unlike the rest of them. This guy, he included a single donation of 9 million in 2025. And then there's Jeremy Hosking, founder of Hosking Partners, extensive fossil fuel investments, and he's donated over 2.4 million. And then there's Richard Tice, the deputy leader, gave 613,000 through his company's Thai Sun Investments Limited and Britain Means Business Limited. Additional donors, Nick Candy, property developer and treasurer, Fiona Cottrell, who's donated 750,000. So when you see this, you begin to question, why would foreign investors want to continue the current system in Britain? It's simple. It's very simple. When we look at record profits for green energy companies and energy companies in general, and the other record level we're seeing is the price paid by the British punter in terms of fuel bills, etc. This is not coincidental. These people are asset stripping the UK and this wealth that Laurie talked about and Simon and we've all talked about. Britain should be, Scotland in particular, is one of the richest parts of the UK, if not the richest part. If you take out the usury in the City of London, which are just basically full of Mr. 10, 20, 30, 40%, then what you see is the potential in Scotland, and this goes back to the 8.4% of the population with 90% of the fresh water, 97.5% of the oil, 65% of the gas, 2/3 of the sea area, 2/3 of the fish by landings, 1/3 of the land area. That's what they don't want to let go of. And that's what these people are investing on. Their investment is not for the joy and the benefit of the British people. It's about getting their money back twofold. And that's what we got to remember. That's why we need independence. That's why we need to stand alone. And that's why we have to look after our own.
Yeah, but that's the hypocrisy and double standards are everywhere, Simon. In fact, The guy who led the debate for the government did not declare a special interest, that he is actually funded by the government of Israel and is a member of the Labour Friends of Israel. I'm of the opinion that no foreign money, no lobbying money should be allowed into politics. It's just wrong all round. It's not democratic.
Well, we can see the result of it across the pond, can't we?
For sure.
When money starts to become the only driving force as regards their politics, as far as I can see. The huge amount of sums that are spent on election campaigns and whatnot, and there's not an eyebrow raised. And if that's where we want to become, that's the way we're headed as part of this union, because we tend to follow in their footsteps because we rely on them so much for security and other things. But that's a whole other debate entirely. The person you're referring to, I think, was the guy Reid, the MP.
Reid, yeah.
I can't remember his ministerial portfolio, but he covers the environment. So he's very, very involved in all these things that we're talking about. And surprise, surprise, it turns out that he's got a vested interest. I would love to see some of these things that are closely guarded down there about vested interests of our MPs and MSPs for that matter. It would need to be totally transparent, because every time I talk about drugs and look at it more deeply and look at why we've still, it's like independence. We're talking common sense here, guys. There's nobody here saying anything outlandish that somebody could say, oh, but wait a minute, you've got your facts wrong. All we're doing is relating the facts as they stand, and it's glaringly obvious. I would suggest to everyone that we're getting the short end of the stick here. And it was a fear campaign that managed to win the day back in 2014. Nothing else, nothing positive about the union. Nobody can tell me anything positive about it. It was only the fear campaign of what we might lose if we stood on our own 2 feet. So with regards to Reid, I think he fits into the same category as everybody else that we're talking about. Let me give you a wee analogy with regards to drugs. I make no apology for it, because it's what I know. It's what I did for my career, and it's what I would regard myself as having some kind of expertise in, especially through the connections that I have with other people and other organisations. Look, New Zealand have released a petition today trying to do exactly what I think we should do in this country. And I know that I'm not talking to converts here. I know that Roddy doesn't agree with me, and that's great. That's what it's all about. And I respect everyone's view. The reason I respect Roddy's review is because it's the way I felt throughout my career. When I was enforcing these drug laws, I was on that side. And it's only latterly over the last 4 or 5 years that I've come to realise the truth of the matter. So that's all. It's not arguments or anything. It's simply looking at the facts and how we interpret them. Here's one useful way of framing it. Everything we're talking about is politics, but some issues are about life and death. And that's what the drug deaths in Scotland is one of. But we're not treating it that way. More than 20 years ago, Scotland made a decision, and it's one of the resources that wasn't mentioned there is our innovation and creation. Scotland are a creative nation. We always have been. Engineers, inventors, you name it. We've always been that way and always will be, hopefully. And one of the things we tried more than 20 years ago was to stand apart and choose to be brave, to be radical, and to treat people with dignity rather than simply respond to the consequences of what was a horrific problem at the time, violence in Scotland. So out of that thinking came the Violence Reduction Unit, not as another enforcement arm, but a recognition that violence wasn't just a crime issue, it was a public health issue. And that simple distinction changed everything. It changed our approach. Instead of asking, how will we punish people? We began to ask, why is it happening? We looked at poverty, trauma, inequality, adverse childhood experiences. I could go on and on, homelessness, all of these things. And we intervened earlier. We got into the communities, into the schools, into homes, and we treated people not as problems to be managed, but lives that could be redirected and signposted in different directions, and people could make different decisions. And it worked. We saw a real measurable reduction in violence that I could give you all the figures for right now. Murder rates are halved. Not overnight, not perfectly, but steadily and meaningfully. the lesson's clear. When we understand the causes of these problems and when we engage them early and treat people with respect, and this is what I meant earlier about Scotland being different, we can change the outcomes. And that model has now been copied globally. And why can't it be applied to drugs issues? I'll tell you why. It's the very thing we're talking about with MPs and MSPs and Mr. Reid here, vested interests.
Yep.
I'll stop there because I could go on now for hours about the people that are making a very good living out of the war on drugs.
Yeah, it's definitely an industry, and it is something that we should one time devote a programme to. Absolutely, 100%. I know Eva would be up for that one as well. There's Mr. Bosley's back. I thought we'd lost him there for a second. It's Laurie. We're talking about here.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that there should be no investment allowed out of. I personally would fund it by the state, which is not a popular view, so that it's properly funded elections and politics. It shouldn't be vested interests. It shouldn't be foreign
Absolutely.
money. It shouldn't be, the lobby of whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a welcome move. But it's far too little and way too late. Big money has been flooding the UK politics for years.
Mm-hmm.
I would make every politician wear a sponsorship jacket, like the Formula One drivers,
Yeah.
so we can see exactly who's backing them. I think that would be fantastic. These guys walking into Westminster, all with these badges all over them, like.
I love it.
Yeah, but these rules are made in Westminster, and we don't have any say. So, again, it's only full independence that lets us stamp out this corruption and introduce proper rules for our communities. We need to, yeah.
It seems to me, Eva, it's not about the money because certain money. It depends where your money comes from. For example, who will vote this through for the government and will back it? Say we shouldn't have any foreign money. One of them will be Yvette Cooper. Now we know that she has taken, and she also prescribed Palestine Action, which I'll come on to shortly. But she's received £215,000 from the Zionist lobby, and then they've got the audacity to stand up in Parliament and say, "Oh yes, we've got to stop foreign money coming into the country." When I say that, I don't mean my money, obviously. That's what they mean. Anything that comes to me, that's okay. But if it goes to anyone that might, become the government instead of us, well, we don't like that.
You remind me once again of that phrase that half the people on the benches opposite are not liars. The difficulty here is, from a Scottish perspective, because that's all that matters to us, from a Scottish perspective, these are the people that John Swinney's going to go to and plead with to get another referendum. And as we speak, they're gathering in Edinburgh to support that position. This is where the Scottish independence movement needs to wisen up and waken up, because the people in Westminster are not to be trusted. They have said over and over again there will not be another referendum. So why the heck the SNP are making that the linchpin of their election campaign this year can mean only one of two things. They're either completely and utterly stupid, or they don't genuinely want independence, because they're hitching their wagon to a government that is already discredited, that has plummeted in the polls, or a Prime Minister whose numbers are amongst the worst in modern history, surrounded by people who've taken foreign money from all over the shop and simply are completely and utterly untrustworthy. They've lost their way. So from a Scottish perspective, the best thing to do on the 7th of May is to look at your ballot paper and think very carefully in the constituency and on the list, who is it?
Oh,
Eva's just gone quiet on us. Would you? That's unusual.
Well, that's a first.
That's a first.
Back.
She's back in the room. She's back in the room.
I've finished now.
But we're talking
maybe
about.
she was vetted out there. Maybe it was the vetting that did it.
Yeah, we're
It's
talking
censored.
about.
Censored. It was censored.
Phil, about there's certain foreign money they don't like because it doesn't, they don't want things influencing their judgment or the decisions they make. Well, here's one this week. Can you explain this to me? What this story, as we all know, the British government are replacing funding the arson attack that was made in London on ambulances for the Hatzola ambulances. For people who don't know, North London, Golders Green. I used to live down there. There's a huge Jewish community, and they have their own ambulances and their own police service in that area, which is funded. But they're paying for it. Why would the British government fund private ambulances? Why would they do that if it wasn't part of the influence they've got from money they've received from somewhere else?
Well, there's an important part of this that I'm actually partially in agreement with the British government here, because anti-Semitism is not on. Okay, and we have to be seen to make sure that we stand against prejudice. Sectarianism in Scotland is a bigger issue, but they're both issues, and civilised individuals ought to treat each other with respect. Now, Hatzola ambulances were burnt in an arson attack. So the arson attack in Golders Green in North London is being treated as an anti-Semitic hate crime by the police. Okay, and it was setting fire.
I don't think. Didn't they set off as a terrorist? They tried to say it was a terrorist attack to start with.
I know, but my answer is the incident involved the setting and fire of 4 ambulances belonging to the Jewish volunteer services. Okay, now they responded to this, put the fires out, but now obviously as human beings we don't condone such attacks, and critically we must champion the critical truth here that the problems of the Middle East, or West Asia as it's properly called, sit squarely at the feet of Zionists, be they Jewish, Christian, atheist or whatever, but it's not Judaism. And that's absolutely critical, that we continue to make sure that's the distinction. The problem we as individuals face is, was this a false flag? Because for Zionists, they're famous for it. Nevertheless, be it a false flag attack on Judaism, it has to be criticised as wrong, no matter what. People, we shouldn't be allowing this in our societies. However, let's not take our eye off the ball here. The genocide and assorted other evil doings of the state of Israel is the big issue. And a lot of this is a deflection, but we as a society need to have a tolerant society where everybody is welcome and everybody is allowed to have their own beliefs and their own values. But for me, I doubt everything I see in the papers today or in the mainstream media where the anti-Semitic card is played. But we must not allow individuals to conflate Judaism with Zionism. Some of my good friends, good Jewish friends, some of the heroes of freedom movements in apartheid South Africa were strong Jewish individuals who, for them, the Holocaust, never again, meant never again for everyone. And that's the message here for me.
Yeah, but what's getting me, Simon, as I say, is that the following day, Keir Starmer was immediately saying that the British taxpayer would fund the replacement of them. Apparently, ambulances had been ordered anyway. These ambulances were being replaced anyway. They were done. But he jumps in and gives the taxpayer money. I've never heard him, for example, saying that he would give the Palestinians replace their ambulances when they were destroyed, but by Israel overnight. I just find it, again, it goes back to what we're talking about, money coming in to influence. And that's what it strikes me as Phil says, could it be a false flag? Absolutely. I'm surprised they didn't pull out an Iranian passport. But it's just wrong for the taxpayer to be funding this.
I can see both sides of it, and but I must confess to coming down on the bigger picture here. And it comes back to Scotland again. It comes back to how we treat our communities and how we treat all of our citizens, everybody. And this is brought to a head at Ibrox a few weeks ago, and I've policed many, many instances like that. Hatred must be dealt with at a national level. It must be dealt with by all of us, regardless of creed and background and the politics of it, even above the politics of it, which I don't believe for a minute is what's going on here. There's lots of politics getting played here. But the underlying principle that we can't just keep building higher walls, thicker doors, more CCTV. We have to deal with hatred right at its source. And I think by standing up and spending a couple of £1,000 to give them new ambulances, if we send out a message that we support everyone in this country and the freedoms of everyone in this country, it's exactly what we want here in Scotland, and will get through independence.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that if they were equitable about what they do. But they didn't. They showed favouritism here. They haven't done the same to help others. It goes back to what I was saying about funding. You stop all funding, all lobbying. If you're going to replace when this happens, you do it everywhere, because then you're getting to the point that you're saying, Simon, is that we're doing it for the same for everybody, but they're not.
I think what I'm saying here is that we did the right thing, or the government did the right thing. I don't believe for a minute it was for the right reason.
Best intentions, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Laurie, you heard my point.
All I'm going to say is, I've personally got little interest in London's propaganda piece. I mean, all I say is there's no smoke without fire, pardon the pun. Whatever the truth, again, Scottish taxpayers are once again, we're helping to pay for this replacement down south. So, I mean, I'm focused on Scotland. I want the best for Scotland, and I try and steer away from all this distraction. For me, personally, there's a big enough job to be done up here. So that's all I'm going to say.
Well, on this, there's another kind of controversial thing this week. Now, I will, unlike Steve Reid or any of the Labour Party, I will declare an interest. I am a huge Republican. There is a move in Scotland by some to give a statue to the old Queen of England. And of course, I would just hasten to add here, she's never a Queen of Scots. There hasn't been a monarch of Scots since 1714 when Queen Anne died. But should we be having a statue to a foreign queen? Could we just maybe the last Dutch king? Why don't we stick up one to him, or the last monarch of Norway? It's, to me, there's better things to spend money on. There's a homeless shelter in Glasgow that could do with the money quicker than this.
We need 100,000 new houses built in Scotland to begin to tackle the housing emergency. Our fuel bills are going through the roof. We passed a fuel station, I think it was yesterday, where diesel was 1.79 pence or £1.79 a litre. We've got food banks, baby banks, school clothing banks, galloping austerity, people concerned about interest rates potentially rising, mortgage, council tax increases, rent increases. And what's the news? We're building a statue to the Queen. I don't bloody well think so. She's the woman, never forget, that paid £12 million to buy silence for her son, who thankfully has eventually been exposed. So I think we need to put this in context. Scotland should be an independent republic. And that used to be a controversial opinion. It no longer is, because the people of Scotland at least are waking up to the fact that rank and privilege have no place in a civilised democracy. So no statues to the Queen here. Those who want a statue to the Queen can put their hand in their own pocket and pay for it themselves.
Here. Also, to remind you, this is the woman who allegedly purred down the phone when the Scots did not get their independence. So, statue or no statue?
Yeah, no statue. I mean, I don't care whether people put up. If you want a statue of the Queen and you're loyal to the Queen, that's your choice. In a free Scotland, you're perfectly entitled to your opinion. But don't expect the Scottish taxpayer to pay for some of this stuff when we have such great needs, as has been articulated by all of us in this programme, and most recently just by Eva. We have greater needs. Do we respect all stripes and all creeds? Absolutely, it's what we need to do. But no, for me, it's a side issue. It's a distraction, as Laurie said earlier, a London distraction. And we don't need that. We need to get ourselves out of poverty. And I know what Simon's been talking about. We've got a bigger drug problem here in Scotland, and deaths by drugs, and some of the worst statistics we've seen. And, maybe another time we could get Simon on and we could talk about what works. Particularly, I was interested in how, and we know some fabulous campaigners here, that we've already spoken to about this, about what the Swiss were doing and what the Portuguese were doing. There are ways we can address this, and it ain't by buying statues.
No. Yeah. In fact, you introduced the topic right at the beginning of the programme, Simon, about priorities. And
Yeah.
to me, a statue to Queen Elizabeth of England is not a top priority.
That's for sure. It's not on top of my list anyway. But a few interesting things came up there. And I like what Phil's saying about when we are independent, because this is inevitability, isn't it? It's only a question of when, not if we become an independent nation. There's a swell of support, not emotional support during the referendum, not canvassed support where we can win people over for one vote. There's a swell, an underlying belief, and a demographic coming up of young people coming up that want different things from life. They know much, much more about what's happening. They're much more aware of what's happening globally and decisions that are being made in their behalf than they ever were in past generations. So there's an inevitability about it. Obviously, it can't come soon enough for us, but we're laying the foundations for that moving forward. But the important thing that Phil said was that we'll be representative of all opinions. Hopefully that's what we're aiming towards here. It's part of our election system that I wanted to just touch on, Roddy, because I've been surprised over the last couple of weeks since we launched the Alliance for an Independent Scotland, that the amount of people that are ignorant of our own voting system, not through their own ignorance, through the lack of media explanation and government explanation, which I find absolutely incredible, that we're still allowing people to give 2 votes to an SNP party, thinking that they're voting for independence, when in actual fact that second vote, in most cases, is wasted, and worse still, actually goes to other parties, unionist parties, and people aren't aware of that. I think that's the big message that we need to get out over the next few weeks before the election, is to help people become aware, because it won't be in the media and it won't be explained. For some reason, the SNP won't explain it. I saw a reel today that they've posted asking for the 2 votes again. And the simple fact is that almost 1 million votes are wasted in that way and go directly to we should do a programme about that, Roddy, to try and help people become aware of how that second or list vote is so important.
Yeah, that's on the agenda, actually. And it was 1.2 million votes to get 2 MSPs. There you go. But the voting system was put in place, Simon, on purpose. The Brits did it. Now, let's remember, give the Brits, credit where credit's due. They don't run the biggest empire the world's ever seen by being straight players. And when they put in that voting system, it was for the very reasons you're talking about. They want the people confused. They think, if I give 2 votes to that party, that's me showing double love for my party. It wasn't. It was to make sure there was always 2 parties would run Holyrood, and they were to be the Labour Party and the Liberal Party, and keep the SNP out. That's what it's all about. You need 2 independence parties if you want to get independence. That's a fact. But we will, another story for another day. Laurie, I cut across before you get your chance to talk about a statue or no statue.
All right, okay. For me, I mean, I feel like I'm suffering from some form of PTSD. Being brought up in Scotland, and the education that I got was all British. I got no Scottish history whatsoever, and it's only now later. I'm 44, but my late 30s, I started to do my own reading on Scottish history and the deep history and identity that we've got. We've got our own crown. As far as I'm concerned, she's the Queen of England, the late Queen of England. She was never the Queen of Scots. And I think that pushing British symbols in Scotland, especially at this time, at this juncture where there's a very, very strong push towards independence, is just wrong. I just think it's wrong. I just think it's wrong. So yeah, that's where I am on it.
Quite right too. But what's happening in 2014, Eva? Scotland was leading the Celtic nations, and we were the big flag for everyone. The people of our cousins in Wales and the 6 occupied counties of Ireland were looking over, going, "Go on, Scotland, you can do them." And here now, recently, we're seeing our dear Celtic cousins down in Wales are heading for a remarkable, a first time out, a huge victory down there in Wales to win 43 of the seats. And you can see Labour, when it was a Labour stronghold for 100 years, languishing down almost into single figures. How things have changed in that short time, and how Wales are now going to could be a guiding light for us.
Quite fascinating when you see how Labour have plummeted there in Wales, and deservedly so, because the Welsh have been taking a loan off for decades, if not for centuries too. And obviously they've some controversial issues regarding the position of the monarchy and the Prince of Wales and why there is a Prince of Wales in the first place, bearing in mind what happened to the last actual Welsh Prince of Wales, but I digress. 2014 should have been a platform for independence, so that when Phil and others were elected in 2015, we should have been talking then in terms of negotiating the independence settlement. But the reason why Wales has surged forward and the support for the SNP has dropped is because the SNP lacked competent government in Scotland in the last 10, 11 years or so. Foolish policies. Their current position for this election is to try and stand on their laurels, but those laurels are predominantly issues that came to the fore during Alex Salmond's tenure, whether it's free prescriptions or the Queensferry crossing or a whole host of other measures, including education, free education, all that sort of thing. And the difficulty that the Scots have got now is that because the constitutional question remains on the table, people think that means they've got to vote SNP if they want independence. But as we said earlier, the SNP don't have a credible plan to regain our independence. Plaid Cymru, on the other hand, look like they're strong and they look like they're competent and they sound like they know what they're doing and they sound determined and they appear to be reasonably well disciplined in comparison to the SNP, who have had scandal after scandal after scandal in conjunction with incompetent government. So if you think on to during the week, there were people talking about Nicola Sturgeon's legacy. Unfortunately, Nicola Sturgeon's legacy will be a rapist in a women's prison wearing a pair of pink leggings. That will be her legacy. But that is an appalling outcome for Scotland when she was elected to create the circumstances that brought us our independence. John Swinney in a similar position, and there he is today in Edinburgh. He'll be talking to people about both votes SNP, which Simon has obviously explained is not the route to independence. And what we need is a recognition from every voter in Scotland who supports independence that, again, as Simon said, you need to vote for two different parties, one on the list, one in the constituency, if you want to vote for independence. Both votes SNP lets the Unionists in, and it's contrary to a vote for supporting independence. So it's good to see Wales coming up, but we should be head and shoulders above them because we had a head start on them. We should be powering ahead. And the reason that we're not is that it's two things: the failure of the SNP leadership and the failure of the movement to unite. So that's why the Yes United event a couple of weeks ago, where Phil spoke, Jim Sillars spoke, Leslie Riddoch spoke, positive event, bringing the movement together, but the Alliance does the same thing, because all we want in the Alliance is independence, nothing less. Some are left wing, some are right wing, some are in the middle. Some of us have no labels at all, but we've got one thing in common, and we need to deliver independence before we can address any of the ills of our country and take Scotland to where we should be, equals on a world stage.
Absolutely. It's not a question of we want independence. Scotland needs independence. Its very survival is in question. But we know over in Ireland, Phil, that Sinn Féin are preparing for a border poll. They've got their ducks in a row. They're ready to go, and the trigger could be the elections in May, where it's expected again that they will sweep the boards in Northern Ireland. And our Welsh friends here, as I say, they too are showing such tremendous results. And and then what have we got with our lot? You've got the Conservatives talking about sleazy John and dragging our politics into the gutter because they don't actually want to talk about the Constitution And the reason they don't want to talk about the Constitution is because they're uncomfortable. It's the one subject they can't defend. And that's why the Alliance to Liberate Scotland has one policy and one policy only: independence, nothing else, because they don't like to fight on that ground.
Correct. And the distinction here that I would be urging folk to recognise is that when you see the history of the Scottish independence movement and where Alex Salmond took us to in the 2014 referendum, that was magnificent. That was the Scotland. We had a competent government and we were successful. And then we handed the keys, the golden keys to Scotland, over to Nicola Sturgeon, and she promptly sold them. Because the current leadership of the SNP are captured by the British state. The British state is not to be underestimated. It's very powerful. They're very good at what they do. Diplomacy is still something they've got. MI5, MI6, 77th Brigade, allied with the CIA and Mossad, are formidable. And they are not. Well, we've got to mess with them because we want our country back. So Wales has it just about right. And what Eva said is correct. Wales has two movements. It's got Plaid Cymru, which is the political arm of Welsh independence, and Yes Cymru, the Yes movement. Quite literally, a reenactment in Wales of the 2014 Yes movement in Scotland. It's got the same logo. That's exactly what it's built around, which is the whole principle or concept of Alliance to Liberate. Why are we even necessary? Well, I would have went with Alapa, okay, because Alex saw the vision. He understood it. But we knew something was awry with Alapa, and I'm sorry. We're so sorry it happened. But the bottom line is, for me, that principle we've set out here. We've all talked about it. We did an alternative, a second vote on this electoral event that is the Scottish Parliament vote. This system requires two independence parties, and Alapa had it right by saying Alapa number 2, SNP 1 and Alapa 2. But if SNP are buying into that, which they didn't, they renounced Alapa and still continue with SNP 1 and 2, means we've got a problem with the SNP. And what is the problem? It's not with the people. It's not with the members of SNP. We need to remember that. The problem is the leadership who are bought and sold for English gold, let's be honest. Yes Cymru, when you go on their website, is dedicated to the goal of an independent Wales, only a Wales with its own government and institutions elected and created by the people of Wales can truly be trusted to govern the best interests of its people. We believe in a future independent Wales which embraces and celebrates the full diversity of everyone who chooses to make Wales their home. Does that sound familiar? You're damn right it does. It's exactly where we were and what we did in the Yes movement, and it's the same philosophy we need right now. Unification. And that means put your egos to the side, stop your bickering and your pettiness. See the sniping. I don't really read social media. Somebody's having an attack at me. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Because the bottom line is this. What's at stake here is the future of Scotland and our people, and the ones that are dying in poverty through drug abuse, through all the horrors and evils that have been posed upon our country, and that those who lack vision, who are too busy with their snouts in the snuff, their snouts in the trough, to see that all they're doing is gorging on the crumbs that fall from the table, when Scotland, as an independent country, can offer all our people a future that's worthy living in under an economic model. For me, I would choose, and I trust the judgment of the Scottish people, that we will end up with a system that's more akin to the Scandinavian model, where a fair and just society is, where it's all inclusive. That's the kind of Scotland we want. And therefore, all of you who are armchair warriors sniping at all the efforts that are going on from people who are trying to their very best to free Scotland, and more importantly, its people, then please think again, and start unifying and understand that we're in it for the right of Scottish people and their future.
Could I just say on the snipers, there's one wee guy that still lives with his mammy who suggests that I am the leader and the autocratic leader of the Alliance to Liberate Scotland. There should have been some of our meetings, Eva, where my name is Be Quiet, Roddy. That's what I thought. My wife thinks that's my code name in the group. Be quiet, Roddy. Oh,
not usually that polite.
Yeah, I was just for the viewer before the watershed, Eva. So, I mean, just for God's sake, Get with the programme. Instead, that same guy, I have never seen attacking a unionist. He was attacking Stuart Campbell, he's attacking me, he's attacking Hazel, attacking anyone on the independent side. He's meant to be an independent supporter. Beats the living daylights out of me. Independence, nothing else. I don't know how that's difficult for anyone to understand or how anyone cannot get behind that. But Simon, on back to the question, we were leading the Celtic pack in 2014. Now it seemed to me that we're lying in third position. What do you think?
How long have you got? Firstly, I need to defend people living with their mammy. Jim Sillers, an old friend of mine when I worked in Govan, in the CID in Govan, and started the very first drugs helpline in Govan. We're talking a few lifetimes ago, unfortunately, 1980s, when Afghan heroin first hit the streets of the UK and Scotland. What do I think? So much to unpack there, and it's very, very difficult to follow these two because everything they said is just on the money. Just a wee slight point for me was that I feel let down badly by the SNP, just like I did by Blair, not personally, but for the working class people of Scotland back when Labour sold their soul for power and let down the working classes totally and moved across the floor, really. And the same thing is happening here in Scotland. In 2014, the Yes movement, we pulled together 45% of the vote. And the day before the election, it was more than that. We had a majority, but Operation Fear kicked in, and Westminster moved its base for a day up to Scotland, and brought in the big money, the supermarkets and all the rest of it. And it was only that operation that managed to stop what was going to be a majority at the time. They pipped us at the post. We had 45% and a lot of people on the fence. And the SNP, Sturgeon in particular, inherited that position. And they've taken advantage of it ever since.
Yeah.
Total advantage of it. And they've become too comfortable. Independence is almost an afterthought for the SNP now because they're feathering their own nest to a great degree. There's a danger in politics that people get too comfortable. And then they've got a pension to look forward to, and they've got all the vested interests that we touched on earlier on. And that's exactly what's happened here. For the life of me, I can't imagine why they want 2 votes, because they're not stupid people. They're not stupid, these leaders. I like what Phil said. It's not the SNP support. They're fantastic. The Yes support, we're part of it. But their leaders are not leading anymore, especially when they allow us to waste 1.2 million votes in an election. That's a vast chunk of the electorate being wasted. And if we could all get together under the umbrella that we've created here in the Alliance, are we aside about that, Roddy? Jock Stein said something a long, long time ago about the Scotland team when he was the manager of the Scotland team. And he reckoned that there was something working against us all the time in every competition. And it was the fact that 11 Scotsmen on a confined space of a football park is probably too many. That they're going to fall out. And there's a grain of truth in that when you talk about the sniping here, isn't there? There's always somebody got to get contrary. There's always got to be somebody not happy about this or about. I coach walking football, and the older we get, the more moany they get. Yeah. The over 75s never stop complaining. You think they'd just be happy to still be there with their football boots on. But no, it's a Scottish trait. But what we need to do over the next 6 weeks is pull that together, that will that we had back in 2014, and realise that everything else is up for grabs and debate in a proper democratic Scotland, where we listen to everybody, we work for the common good, and we all succeed together and take everyone with us in the Scotland that we want to create. And we'll create that together. But first and foremost, we have to get those levers to allow us to do that. And the only way to do that is to become an independent nation.
Yeah, well said. And the last word to you, Laurie. Do you think we've gone from first to third in the Celtic nations of getting out of the Union?
I find it very interesting. When you zoom out and you look at history, if you look at over the last 100 years, where the UK, where it was and where we are now, it just kind of proves to me that we are on the right side of history. You know, what we are pushing for. And the only thing that's stopping us now is imagination, right? As far as I'm concerned. We are a rich country, people, land, resources, a lot of it. we should not be fearful of what the road that lies ahead. I feel it's inevitable, but the only thing that is lacking now is imagination and the will, and we just need to help the people see that. And as I see myself now, you know, I never thought of myself being a politician. I'm not a politician, but I've joined this fight because I believe that we do need to start pulling our people, our leaders, thought leaders like myself, Eva, Phil, normal working class people that are fed up with the status quo, and we need to push for this future. And it's a positive, bright future I see. But when I look at what's happening in Wales, it reaffirms to me that we're on the right side of history. And I could see a united Ireland. I could see Wales being independent. I see Scotland being independent, and take that even further. You know, because I do believe in decentralized power. You know, power should lie with the people. You know, so the more decentralized it can be, and the decisions being made at that local level, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. And on that note, the clock has beaten us. But just say to you, ladies and gentlemen, you know, when it comes to the voting day, think carefully what you're doing. The messages are, you know, the Labour Party is telling you, vote for change. SNP are saying SNP 1-2. We're saying independence, nothing else. Independence, nothing less. Which do you like the best? That's the one to support. Till we see you and yours again. Take care now.
Thanks, guys.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.